The city of Bengaluru erupted in joy. Royal Challengers Bengaluru finally lifted the IPL trophy. Fans celebrated wildly on the streets. A moment of pure, unadulterated happiness for many. It was a significant victory, a long wait finally over. Yet, something felt different this time. The Prime Minister, usually so quick to associate himself with any national achievement, big or small, remained unusually silent. There was no congratulatory tweet taking subtle credit, no grand pronouncements linking the win to national pride orchestrated from the top. This silence, in its own way, was rather conspicuous, a deviation from a well-established pattern of leadership. This observation naturally leads one to think about other silences, other patterns. Our Prime Minister is known for his extensive foreign travels. The world has been his stage, countless countries visited, numerous agreements signed, or so we are told. These trips are not inexpensive affairs. They cost the public exchequer a significant amount of money. Crores upon crores are spent on each visit, on delegations, on chartered flights. The question that often hangs in the air, unasked by many, is about the tangible returns. What have these grand tours, these elaborate photo opportunities truly yielded for the common citizen of India beyond the headlines? Now consider the G7 summit. For 6 consecutive years, India was an invited guest, a special invitee to this powerful club of nations. Each invitation was hailed as a diplomatic triumph, a testament to India's growing stature on the world stage. Our media channels would run breathless commentary, experts would be paraded to explain the significance of India sitting at the high table, rubbing shoulders with the world's most influential leaders. It was presented as an undeniable sign of our arrival, our recognition as a global player whose voice mattered deeply. But this year, 2025, something changed. The G7 leaders met, pictures were taken, declarations were made. Yet India was not there. There was no Indian delegation, no prime ministerial presence. The string of invitations so proudly displayed for 6 years was seemingly broken. And the loudest sound accompanying this absence was the deafening silence from those who had previously celebrated the presence. Why was India missing? Why the quiet? This is not just a diplomatic question. It is a question that touches the core of our public discourse and accountability. Let us recall the past. Each time India received an invitation to the G7 summit, it was presented as a major diplomatic victory. Our newspapers would carry front-page stories. Television channels would dedicate hours of prime-time discussion to analyze the implications. Spokespersons from the ruling party would laud the Prime Minister's global leadership. It was framed as evidence that India was no longer just a regional power, but a global influencer, a Vishwaguru whose wisdom the world sought. This narrative was carefully constructed and consistently reinforced year after year, creating an image of ever-expanding influence. The G7 summit of 2025 hosted recently proceeded without India's participation. The leaders of the 7 wealthiest democracies, along with other invited nations, convened to discuss pressing global issues. There were handshakes, joint statements, and the usual diplomatic ballet. However, the familiar sight of an Indian representative among them was absent. There has been no official statement from the Ministry of External Affairs explaining this absence. No clear reason has been provided to the Indian public as to why a consistent 6-year streak of invitations suddenly came to an end. This lack of information is puzzling, to say the least. The contrast in media coverage is stark, almost jarring. When India was invited, the headlines were bold, the tone celebratory. The presence was amplified, dissected, and glorified. Now, with India not on the guest list, there is a palpable silence. The same media outlets that previously dedicated so much airtime to the G7 invitations are now conspicuously quiet about the non-invitation. There are no urgent debates questioning this development, no persistent reporters demanding answers from the government. It is as if the question itself is too uncomfortable to ask, too inconvenient to explore. This silence is not merely an oversight. It feels deliberate, managed. When good news, or what is packaged as good news, is available, it is broadcast with maximum fanfare. But when the narrative shifts, when a potential setback occurs, a veil of silence descends. What does this selective amplification and muting tell us about the health of our media? Is it truly serving the public interest, or has it become a tool for narrative management, echoing only what is comfortable for those in power? The absence from G7 is not just a diplomatic event, it is a litmus test for transparency. So, why was India absent from the G7 summit this year? While official channels remain silent, one cannot help but explore the possible reasons. The most prominent among these is undoubtedly the strained relationship between India and Canada. The accusations made by the Canadian Prime Minister regarding the alleged involvement of Indian agents in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. This has led to a significant downturn in bilateral ties, with expulsions of diplomats and heated rhetoric from both sides. Could this be a factor? The Khalistan issue, intertwined with the India-Canada dispute, has also cast a long shadow. Several G7 nations have significant Sikh diasporas, and the concerns raised by Canada might have found resonance among some of them. It is plausible that the host nation or the G7 collective felt that India's presence, given the current circumstances, might complicate the summit's agenda or create diplomatic awkwardness. International forums are sensitive ecosystems, and unresolved disputes between nations can often lead to such exclusions to maintain a semblance of harmony among attendees. Beyond the Canadian imbroglio, one must also consider if other Western powers have growing reservations about certain aspects of India's current trajectory. Are there concerns about internal policies, the state of democratic institutions, or even shifts in foreign policy alignments that might have contributed to this G7 oversight? Diplomacy is a complex game of chess where multiple factors influence decisions. The narrative of India's unquestioned global rise might be facing some uncomfortable realities that are not being openly discussed within the country, especially by those who are meant to keep the public informed. Furthermore, while the G7 is a club of wealthy Western nations, India's standing is also linked to its relationships within its own neighborhood. Are our ties with neighboring countries as robust and friendly as they are often portrayed? Consistent diplomatic engagement on all fronts is crucial for maintaining and enhancing global influence. A perceived weakening of diplomatic capital in one area can have ripple effects elsewhere. The absence from the G7 might be a symptom of broader, more complex diplomatic challenges that India is currently navigating, challenges that demand open acknowledgement and discussion. The media, in a functioning democracy, carries a profound responsibility. Its duty is not just to report events, but to provide context, to ask difficult questions, and to hold those in power accountable for their actions and decisions. This responsibility extends equally to domestic affairs and foreign policy. The way India engages with the world, its successes and its setbacks on the international stage, are matters of significant public interest. Citizens deserve to know how their country is perceived globally and why certain diplomatic engagements occur, or, crucially, why they do not. However, what we often witness is a peculiar pattern of behavior within large sections of our media. When India is invited to prestigious global forums like the G7, it is celebrated with immense enthusiasm, often bordering on jingoism. The presence is highlighted as a personal triumph for the leadership. Yet, when an invitation is not extended, as happened this year with the G7, an unsettling silence pervades. This selective reporting creates a distorted picture, a narrative of uninterrupted success, which may not reflect the complex realities of international relations. It is a disservice to the audience. This tendency towards opacity and selective cheerleading is not an isolated phenomenon. We have seen similar patterns in the communication around sensitive national operations. Consider the aftermath of events like the hypothetical Operation Sindoor, where clear factual information was scarce and the vacuum was quickly filled by speculation, misinformation, and even fake news, sometimes amplified by irresponsible sections of the media itself. When official channels are parsimonious with truth and the media fails to probe, the public is left confused and vulnerable to manipulation. This erodes trust in both government and media institutions. The government's communication strategy, especially concerning international relations or critical internal security matters, often appears to prioritize narrative control over genuine transparency. There seems to be an unspoken rule: amplify the positive, downplay or ignore the negative. While managing perceptions is a part of statecraft, a complete lack of explanation for significant shifts like missing the G7 after years of attendance raises serious questions. Is the media complicit in this strategy by not pursuing the story, by not demanding answers with the same vigor it displays when celebrating perceived achievements? It must be stated clearly and unequivocally, asking questions of the government is not an anti-national act. In fact, it is the very bedrock of a healthy, vibrant democracy. Citizens have an inherent right to be informed, to understand the decisions made in their name, especially those that impact the nation's standing on the global stage. When elected representatives and public institutions operate under a shroud of secrecy, or when they choose silence over explanation, it undermines the democratic spirit. The G7 absence is one such instance where questions are necessary. The Indian public deserves a clear and honest explanation regarding the country's non-participation in the G7 summit this year. Was it a deliberate decision by the Indian government to decline an invitation, and if so, what were the reasons? Or was an invitation simply not extended by the host nation or the G7 collectively? The ambiguity surrounding this issue is deeply concerning. It prevents any meaningful public debate or assessment of India's current foreign policy trajectory and its effectiveness. Silence breeds speculation, and speculation is rarely a good foundation for public understanding. This is not merely about attending one international summit, it is about the larger picture of India's role and influence in an increasingly complex and multipolar world. Are we truly the indispensable global player that we are often told we are? Or are there nuances and challenges to this narrative that are being kept from public view? Understanding our real position with its strengths and weaknesses is crucial for informed citizenship. Pretending that every diplomatic engagement is a triumph and every absence is insignificant is a path to self-deception. Ultimately, transparency and accountability are not optional extras in a democracy. They are fundamental requirements. The silence surrounding India's absence from the G7 needs to be broken, not by whispers and rumors, but by credible information and open discussion. The media has a duty to pursue these answers, and the government has a duty to provide them. The people of India must be taken into confidence about the nation's journey on the world stage, its challenges and its strategies. For democracy to thrive, it cannot be kept in the dark.